Well, I think there are two big things that are happening. One is, of course, the overall economy, trade wars, and the other is, in fact, these very high numbers you've seen in terms of production and the expectation of more. But, Joe, I would say, in addition, before we get to the OPEC meeting, we have the G20 meeting, and some of those meetings are not consequential. I think this one will be very consequential because people will look for it for signals in terms of the global economy. President Trump's meeting with President Xi, and then you're also going to have President Putin there and presumably the Saudi Crown Prince. And in 2016, it was on the sidelines of the G20 meeting that they started to get together Russia and Saudi Arabia on oil prices. So I think people will be looking very carefully at those meetings. And then right after that, as you say, you get to the OPEC meeting.
How long do you expect this kind of news to keep hitting about Saudi Arabia and maximizing their output? It's not in their best interest for that long, unless there could be some political angle to all that.
This was pretty strange that because of course the Saudis have been talking about going back to the production levels that they were at before they stepped up production to deal with Iranian sanctions. There are two explanations for this. One is that they wanted to demonstrate that they really do have the spare capacity. If there's a disruption, they can put oil into the market. The other, they say that their customers were asking for oil because of cutbacks from Iran. But I think that increase really took the market by surprise, and you've seen the effects in the last day or so of that.
Hey, Dan, the third being that they're doing this to show a little bit of political fealty to the Trump administration because they don't want them making a big deal about Khashoggi.
Well, I think there's that aspect of it, and I think also going into the OPEC meeting that will come up just a few days after the G20, there are two things they'll be focused on. One, they'll be focused on what looks like rising production in 2019, and the other, as you suggest, also, they're going to be worried about tweets from the White House.
Right. Dan, very quickly, Steve Leisman has a question for you. He's just wondering, with the U.S. producing so much oil these days, are lower prices bad or good for the U.S. economy?
Well, I think it depends where they are. The whole shale oil complex has been a big boost to the overall economy because of the supply chains, all that money being spent in the economy. Prices, so it's kind of in the middle range is probably the best answer. Good for consumers, but also this has been a very important driver of capital investment in the United States.
Hey, Dan, in terms of the continued relationship between the United States and Saudi, obviously Congress is now looking at a bill that would effectively reinvestigate in a very public way and potentially censure, if not sanction, the country over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi in a way that the president has not in terms of that censure. Do you think that's realistic? Do you think that's coming?
I think it is. I think that this isn't over, and that when the Congress comes back, well, they're there now, but then when they come back in the new year and also with the Democratic House, I think these issues will continue to be out there. This is going to.
And how will that impact the relationship between the countries, and also the price of oil?
Well, I think there are two things. One is the overall relationships between the countries. There are a lot of dimensions to it. I think it will create rancor as it continues. And in terms of the price of oil, I think that we'll see them still trying to kind of stabilize the price of oil because their budget's at stake. At 50, if oil continues to fall, that's a huge hit. And I think the producers, both Saudi and the non-OPEC, Russia, will continue to try and make a deal if you're in a low price period.
On the demand side of things, just as you were watching it, did oil crack before or concurrent with or after the equities? If oil cracked first, you could say, well, equities are trading off that. If equities cracked first, you say, well, obviously it's a risk off and oil is going to go down. I mean, how did that work? Was oil telling us something?
Well, I think that there was a very high sort of kind of a geopolitical spike in oil. And, the first week of October, oil was at 86 and people were saying it was going to go to 100. And now we have this whiplash of looking at West Texas, it's down at 50. I think it's been part of the overall risk off right now in terms of oil. The longs are all gone. But I think it's part of, I think you have to also see it in this larger economic context, the specter of slowdown and this uncertainty around trade.
Right. We don't know, just like everything, things predict, 10 out of the last 2 recessions. So you never know what's a real.
And you can see that the U.S. producers are now redoing their budgets for lower prices, and that will have some impact on the growth next year.
Yeah, Bitcoin producers too, Dan. I don't know if you saw that, but we're factoring. We covered it all here.
We left out Bitcoin.
We did. Dan Yergin.
Next time.
Thanks, Dan. Dan Yergin, IHS.